Hello, Internet peoples. I am Insane Lane, and the court is late again. They are pushing 20 minutes late again. I would imagine that the lawyers are in chambers still arguing with each other. The judge is counting the minutes until she can pour some bourbon. The guy who's been a witness all day is really happy because he's getting paid. And everybody else is probably very, very bored. The jury has got to be ready to mutiny by now after yesterday's exceedingly boring and pointless line of witnesses. They had one witness that they needed. Everybody else was pointless. In this morning's very, shall we say, contentious start, because the state is objecting every 5 minutes, which means they have to go up to the bench because they're not allowed to talk out loud in the courtroom because they ticked off the judge. And now we have all this morning shenanigans. You know, I was like, there was a 50-50 chance that I was expecting, and maybe there's an order to when they would announce this, but I was 50-50 expecting this morning the judge to announce that the evidence tampering charge had been dropped, because if I'm the defense, again, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm probably about to butcher this, and I don't know what the laws specifically to New Mexico are. There may be a certain appropriate time in the course of a trial for them to do this. But if I'm the defense, I'm putting up my hand and saying, Your Honor, I request that the evidence tampering charge be dismissed because the state has utterly failed to make its prima facie case, i.e. to prove that it was evidence, to prove that there was tampering, or to prove that it is relevant in any kind of way. Because that's what the state didn't do. They didn't prove relevancy. And given that they can't prove that it was cocaine, they would have been better off actually not harping on that it was cocaine and just saying she gave you something, right? She gave you something that she wanted to hide from the police, obviously. Were they coming to search her room right then? As far as I know, the police never did search her room. That's another one on them. But it would have been better for the narrative to say, oh, she was obviously trying to hide something. There were police in the hall. You passed them when you were walking, didn't you? Did you think that she was trying to hide something from the police? Then you have relevancy. Then you have at least the suggestion that it's evidence. Now, if I'm the defense, I'm still trying to get that thrown out because you didn't actually prove anything. But I just made a better argument than the state did. So I do hope the defense does not drop the ball, because, again, she's looking at more time for the evidence tampering than for the negligent homicide. That's just the way it is. The sentencing on negligent homicide is very light. It's like 18 months because it's an accident. It's death by stupid. Somebody else is stupid, not the victims. And so the sentence is very low. Other states, not so much. Other states, it carries the same as a murder or a homicide. Not in New Mexico. But the evidence tampering charge does carry up to, I believe, 3 or even 4 years. So that's the one. If I'm the defense, that's what I'm very worried about fading. Because while 18 months does suck, the fact is most people serve less than a third of their sentence with good behavior. So she could be out in as little as 6 months, and that's a lot better than 3 to 4 years. So we may see that later. It may be that they cannot make that motion until a certain time, or the defense is just really incompetent. Because if they don't at least try, I'm not saying they'll win, but if they do not at least try, that is some serious incompetence. That is utterly failing to do your job, which I already see Hannah having a massive appeal for ineffective counsel. Now, granted, those are almost never successful because the court's opinion of that is, well, you chose your lawyer. You knew what their background was. You know, you had the choice of other lawyers. She's clearly well-funded. So that probably wouldn't fly, but it is there because, as we discovered, Mr. Bowles, Mr. Shiny Head, is not primarily a criminal lawyer, and that's been becoming more and more evident. It's also, I believe, pretty evident that he has very limited, if any, trial experience, because he does not know how to cross a witness. He's this close. He's got the logic part of it, but he doesn't have the theatric part of it. And court is a theater. It is a show. You know, those 12 people in the jury box, they're as influential as an influenceable as anybody else. We are now officially 22 minutes late. But this really is the court that never starts on time. Maybe there's like half a chance the judge is just stalling so she doesn't have to put up with as much of these people today. Because there is only about 3 hours left. Well, more like 2.5 because they tend to stop early. They tend to stop around about 4:30 New Mexico time. Given that most courts go to 5 or even 6, that's early. But it's going to depend on who the defense calls next, because they're not done with the private investigator. They just took lunch in the middle of his testimony, so he's still up there. And the state did not like what they were hearing. They have not had their chance at him yet. Or no, I think they did start to. But they didn't get very far. And then defense, of course, gets redirect. I'm not sure who they would put after that because their two biggest witnesses are going to be Del Reed and Hannah, and both of them are going to take longer than the time we have left today. I mean, they could get started. Again, I'm looking at a picture on Discord and it's adorable. That is one of those things that a friend of mine's kid, upon seeing a video of baby red pandas, he very seriously turned to his mom and said, "Those can't be real, they're too cute. Those are stuffed animals." And he will still tell you that red pandas are not real. They are stuffed animals because they're too cute to be real. So, yes, this lovely picture is way too cute to be real. Look at it. Oh my God. Oh my God, it's so cute. I don't know why, but ever since I was a kid, I've been obsessed with duck-billed platypus. Maybe just because I thought they were weird or adorable or something, but I always wanted one. I wanted to see one, pet one. I'm pretty sure we have them in Canada. We must. We have everything. We don't have as much everything as Australia, granted. Australian animals are weird and deadly. We have more cute animals. Or animals that look unassuming but can still kill you. Don't ever try to hit a moose. Or a deer. My favorite is still the beaver that was in a hospital eating their Christmas decorations for hours. And because it would freeze every time a person came near, several people thought it was a decoration and took pictures with it. Eventually, the beaver was relocated to the pond outside that he probably came from. Yeah, he just wanted some Christmas treats. This court is taking for flippin' ever. Yeah, the beaver, it was adorable. I remember when they dumped him back in, all his limbs were out, and he's like, "Freedom!" I'm willing to bet he did not return. Still pouring over part two of my dark fairy tale. I had to do some research over lunch because I'm filling in. I'd left a couple of holes for like specific names of things that I needed to research, and then that proved more difficult than I thought because I needed pictures with the names so I could point and go, "That's the one that I mean. That one. What's it actually called?" I actually found a website selling them, which is creepy. Though I've learned you can buy just about anything on the internet, including things that you probably should not be able to buy. I've definitely come across some things that just no, nobody should be able to just buy that on like Amazon or eBay or something. No. But I found the name of the thing. So that's progress. I have to find every place I need to fill it in because literally as I was writing I was just putting bracket name of thing, bracket. But this is the price you pay for cutting corners. Oh, I forgot there were two things I have to look up the name of. Flip. Oh, that's right. The first one I had it written down, and then I lost my research or my bookmark or something, or I forgot to bookmark it or something. Darn it. Now I gotta look that up again. Yeah, my Google search history is gonna be so demented. Literally, if I ever get accused of murdering anyone, it's not gonna help. Hey, they're really taking their flippin' time. Like, come on. It's ridiculous. The court is a half an hour late. And I did check the time. They were only supposed to be gone for an hour 10 from where they stopped, and that was a half hour ago. And yeah, I'm looking at other channels now, and they're confirming the court is really, really late. You know, I've been hearing a lot of people say that the court TV chat room is like really toxic. So I've been trying to keep an eye on it. It's, well, for one, it's just a lot of people. There's thousands of people watching. Now, granted, only like a percentage of those are active in the chat, but it's really toxic. It's a lot of shouting. It's a lot of all caps. You know, it's roughly 1,000 people playing armchair quarterback and Monday morning detective, which is exactly what I'm doing, but I'm smarter than them. You know, they could be arguing something behind the scenes that is taking a while, because I do think they had it sounded like there was something they needed to work out. You know, maybe they should have started later in the day and worked all this out beforehand. Maybe it's a strategy. There's a lot of possibilities going on. Hmm. Just the urge to hum because YouTube doesn't like it. Also doing the Wordle and it's telling me my words are not words. I'm not saying that it's wrong, I'm saying it's stubborn. I'm not doing well today. I don't have any good letters left. What I was trying to spell. But help if I could spell, which I can't. I'm quite universally awful. It's usually right when it tells me something is not a word. Though a couple times I have been right that it was a word and it's just not on the list. What can I spell? Oh, okay, I got letters. I know, that's not what it is. How is that not what it is? What? No. Oh, I'm gonna fail. That's not a word. Double letter. Freck. Double letter gets me every time. I should have known too, because a friend of mine did it last night, and he got a higher score than usual, and said it was because of his like most hated thing, which is double letters. I should have known. I gotta pay more attention. I could have done better on that. We're still waiting for the court to start. I am so sorry, everybody, but I don't control them. If I did, it would be run properly and on time. Writing twisty stuff right now, Court TV or New Mexico Court House. Control your day. By now, they're not still at lunch. They're in chambers arguing over things. And I can only imagine the judges telling them to, like, come on, wrap it up. We got to get on with this. We don't have that much time left. Because in theory, this trial is supposed to be over on Friday. And both the prosecution and the defense said they believe that they can deliver closing arguments on Thursday. So the trial could end on Thursday, at least according to them. But not if it keeps going like this. Oh, I think we have the top of the judge's head. We may finally be getting somewhere. Yes, finally! Wow, they're only a whole 40 minutes late.
All right, you may be seated. All right, you may be seated.
All right, Mr. Elliott, I want to just back up for a brief moment. I want to go back. Mr. Elliott, I want to just back up for
Why are we getting...
a moment. I want to go back to...
Wait, I'm getting a double.
Any concerns you had about
okay,
the projectile
there we go.
not matching the gun. I'm not sure that I fully understand what your concerns are in that regard. Would you articulate them for us again?
I know.
Yes, I was referring to the concerns that a
It
detective would have
does.
upon arriving at scene. You don't have the,
I believe they're
at
still
the
all
time, the
media
results of lab
people.
testing. So, and you have nothing guaranteed.
What do you mean, nothing guaranteed?
Well, at the time, you had some people saying this is the gun, but you didn't have any evidence, scientific evidence, showed that was the gun, which was later found to be true. I'm just talking about you have so many variables and so many unknowns that you can only use interviews on the scene to confirm and deny things. One person saying this is the gun, that may very well be the gun, but you have to see if someone else can verify that. Later on, you're going to have lab results, not
Yeah.
at the time. And that's what I was referring to.
Because in fairness,
at the
on
scene
the
on
body
October
cam,
21st.
So what's your
when Hannah gives
concern
the
then
detective the
about
gun, she's like, I think it was this one. I think it
investigation
was
that
this
the
one.
Sheriff's Department
She doesn't
did
know.
with regard to the gun? Is your testimony that after Ms. Gutierrez identified the gun to Lieutenant Benavides and handed him the gun, there should
I'm
have been
thinking
more
she
follow-up
lost
with regard to whether
in
or not
Chambers
that
because
was
her
really the
fire
gun?
is gone. She looked way
Is
more
that what you're
confident
saying?
before
Yes,
lunch.
because she's not the one that handed the gun to Mr. Baldwin. There are people in between that process. So
Continue, sir. I apologize.
right. Again, pieces of information come out as they're going through both processing the scene and interviewing people. And now we know that there is some time delay between the firearm being loaded, the firearm being on the cart, the firearm making it to Mr. Baldwin inside the church. And that's what I meant by the investigation at the time. A lot of information is coming out over months. Some information has come much later.
But you agree with me that Ms. Gutierrez handed Lieutenant Benavides the gun and said, this is the gun that was being used. And when she said that, she had been identified as the armor on the movie set. You agree with that?
I do.
And you also agree that, not surprisingly, that turned out to be the gun. You agree with that?
Oh, I do, yes.
So any potential issues with regard to that specific concern of yours didn't turn out to be issues. There's no issue. You agree with that? This is the gun that fired that projectile.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
She's recovering a little.
There was an objection, and I'm gonna go through with you. You were
I
talking
really
about
want to know what happened behind the scenes because she's
ammo
nervous.
boxing. I think that was where the objection was. So as the investigator in this case, have you reviewed all of the body-worn camera footage?
I have. There's a lot.
So have I.
Yes.
I'm sympathetic to the exhausted look on your face. I'm going to show you what has been marked as what is already in evidence as State's Exhibit 192. Sir, have you seen this exhibit?
I have.
You agree with me that this is
A very badly enhanced
Lieutenant
image.
Benavides is pointing to the box that Ms. Gutierrez identified as the box that she was pulling ammunition from. Do you agree with that?
He is pointing to a box of ammunition, yes.
Are you indicating that you believe that the box here in this picture was not the box that she was pulling ammunition from?
He would have no way of
I'm
knowing
not.
that.
There were two boxes, and I don't know if it was clearly
And that is so
delineated to him
blurred.
which of the two boxes was
How can you tell what it is at
where the
all?
ammo was drawn from.
Well, you understood that the gun was loaded with dummies or was supposed to be loaded with dummies at the time of the incident, right?
Right.
Yeah, she's rattled
And
because
you
that was
also
not a good
understand that
question.
this was the only box of dummies on the cart. You understand that, right?
Now she
The
sounded
other
bitchy.
boxes were blanks, correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Gutierrez said to Lieutenant Benavides, "This is the box I was pulling from," right?
Yes.
You don't think that Ms. Gutierrez meant to say I was pulling from a box of blanks when the gun was loaded with supposed dummies, do you?
No, I don't.
Okay. State's Exhibit 62. Have you seen this photo?
I probably have hundreds of photos of white boxes, but I can't
That
specifically say this photo.
does the box on the left, does that label look familiar to you in your investigation in this case?
It does.
So, based on your investigation, do you have any reason to believe that the box that Ms. Gutierrez pointed out to Lieutenant Benavides is not this box that he took and placed in his unit?
I do not. And I believe that photo is taken in the unit, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I can see the seat.
State's Exhibit 63. You understand that this is a photo of that exact same box when it was taken into evidence at the sheriff's department, right?
If you say so.
Yes, that's how it's labeled. Yes.
I'm not asking how it's labeled. You've reviewed the evidence at the evidence room, right?
Yes.
And you've reviewed all the
She's
photographs
getting
that were
really
taken on scene.
snotty
Yes.
now.
Let me ask you, isn't it true that there was only one box found with this label? Isn't that correct?
That I don't know.
Yeah, of course he's not going to know.
You're the defense investigator on this case, right?
Yeah, he's not yours.
Have you seen photographs of a box that looks like this, but is loaded with something other than what this box was loaded with? Sir, do you have any reason to believe that there were
Ma'am, do you
two
have a real
boxes
question?
with this label that were
Ben
taken
should
into
be
evidence?
objecting. She's
I
badgering.
do not know.
State's Exhibit 69. Have you seen this photo?
Again, I've seen dozens of photos. So.
Well, you're here to give an opinion about the investigation on this case. Are you not familiar with this photograph?
Specifically, no.
Okay. Did you watch the interview in November that Ms. Gutierrez gave to Detective Hancock?
I did.
And do you recall during that interview, Ms. Gutierrez holds up her phone and says, "This is a picture of our dummies," meaning the dummies that she would bring on the set. Do you recall that?
I do recall that, yes.
Isn't this the photo that she showed? You don't know?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. You weren't watching the testimony of our expert, Mr. Hawks, when he laid the foundation for this and indicated that this photograph was sent from a contact in her phone named
On the witness list, he
Dadula,
can't be watching.
to her the day before the interview with Detective Hancock. Were you not aware of that?
I was not, no.
She knows that. They really should have objected that and say, "Excuse me, are you accusing our witness of breaking the court's rules?"
So,
Like,
sir,
defense
based
team,
on
wake
Ms.
the hell up. She
Gutierrez's
objected to you
statements,
enough. Give it back.
would it be her own statements to law enforcement? Would it be reasonable for law enforcement to believe that State's Exhibit 62, this box here in the foreground, is indeed the box she was pulling from because she said that? Wouldn't that be reasonable for law enforcement to believe that?
Yes, it would.
And you understand that that box was determined to have a live round.
Yes.
And you agree with me that that box that had the live round matches this photo that was shown to Detective Hancock during the November 9th interview. You understand that?
Yes, I do.
Sir, do you still have questions and concerns about how the live rounds got on set?
Yes.
I do.
You
When-
don't think that law enforcement can simply take Ms. Gutierrez's word for it that this is her box?
It is a very
And this is the one she
unfortunate
was
color.
pulling
And
from,
she,
this is
I'm
the one
sorry,
where live
defense,
rounds
do
were
your
found?
job. Get the
Yes,
hell
but
out.
we don't know how many times those boxes were unloaded and reloaded. Every time that one of the
Like,
firearms
not
were
that she's
loaded
not
with
making
rounds,
herself look terrible.
came out
Like,
of
the
a
jury's
box.
going to hate her. She
They didn't necessarily go back.
is
into
acting
the
like an
same
absolute
box.
bitch. But that's why the defense needs to stand up and say objection, and they're not doing
Do you
that.
agree with me, sir, that there are certain things in homicide investigations that just simply can't be controlled for? Do you agree
No.
with that?
Oh, absolutely.
Sir, what's the smallest police department you've ever worked for?
Albuquerque PD.
You agree with me that the Albuquerque Police Department is approximately 10 times the size of the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department with regard to the number of commissioned officers?
I am. I think Albuquerque's around 850, and I think Santa Fe's 120, 130, something like that.
Okay. More than 8 times.
Right.
You agree with that, Matt?
Yes, it's not a big police force. That doesn't excuse blatant incompetence of not arresting Baldwin,
Have
taking
you
his
ever worked
phone,
on a homicide
securing the
investigation on a
scene,
movie set?
sequestering the witnesses, and
Oh,
making
right.
sure you had the right gun.
Do you agree with me that normally in homicide investigations, police aren't concerned with where the live ammo came from? This case is unique in that regard, isn't it?
This
Yes.
case is unique from the beginning, yes.
Okay, it is, right? It's
Mhm.
unique from the beginning. So police officers, you would agree, are not trained in how to investigate homicides on movie sets where they're
They're trying to
not supposed
investigate
have
a
live rounds, they're
homicide.
supposed to have
So
fake rounds.
what? Period. End of
Cops aren't
sentence.
trained in that, right?
Specifically.
Again, defense. Do your flipping job, please. Oh,
And
puppy go
you
bark.
agree with me, don't you, that Lieutenant Benavides can't just let Ms. Gutierrez walk around the movie set with a firearm that appears to have just shot 2 people. You agree with that?
Oh, I do agree with that with reference to firearm, yes.
Yeah.
So cute.
It was incumbent on Lieutenant Benavides to remove that firearm from her possession, correct?
From anyone's possession, yes.
And you just take issue with the fact that he didn't put a glove on before he did it.
Basically, yes.
But you agree that the fact that he didn't put a glove on didn't turn out to create
you
any
hear this
significant evidentiary issues in this case because everybody knew who was holding the gun and everybody knew who shot the gun. You agree with that?
I do.
And sir, you
I'm
also
very
agree
sure
with
that
me,
he
don't you,
is.
that a police officer's first responsibility is to save human lives, not collect evidence.
Correct, as I stated, yes.
And do you recall that Ms. Gutierrez was actually checked by EMTs when she was sitting in the back of Lieutenant Benavidez's patrol unit?
Yes, I did see that.
And you agree that she was allowed to make phone calls?
Yes, she was.
I think you indicated that You talked a little bit about that Detective Hancock sort of took possession of Ms. Gutierrez. Do you recall the statement that you made in that regard?
I do.
So I want to ask you, and one of the examples you gave was that Detective Hancock even accompanied Ms. Gutierrez to the restroom, right?
Yes, she did.
But in watching the body-worn camera footage, isn't it true that Sergeant Christopher Zook tells Detective Hancock, she doesn't want to go to the bathroom alone. Will you take her to the bathroom? Ms. Gutierrez actually asks to be accompanied to the bathroom. Do you recall that?
I do.
She was put in the back of a police car. It is not unreasonable for her to think she was being detained.
And do you
Also,
agree
by
with me
all of
that
the
it
police
was
action,
Ms.
she
Gutierrez
was.
who asked to be placed in Detective Hancock's patrol unit? That wasn't something that the police just unilaterally did with her.
No, she did. She did ask.
Is there a problem with them granting her request that she be accompanied to the bathroom?
No, but I didn't think that included going into the bathroom with her. Can I elaborate?
Sure.
Yeah, like, would you do
I
that to
believe
anyone
she
who's
stated
not
something
being
along the lines
detained?
of she didn't want to talk to anyone from production. So it's kind of like if she
Yep.
was with Detective Hancock, she wouldn't be approached by any of her coworkers.
Yep.
I think that was her intention of being escorted,
Yep.
but I didn't think it included going into the bathroom itself.
Well, she went into the bathroom and she had her
This is a
breath there,
ridiculous
Ms.
argument
What's the big deal? Ms.
for
Gutierrez asked for an
the
escort.
state to be making. What does
how did
it
that hurt your
matter?
investigation?
Like, they're making themselves look worse by
Hurt the
harping on this
investigation?
point because
It did not.
it's a common sense argument. By any common sense, Miss Gutierrez Reed was being detained, period. Alec
Now,
Baldwin was not,
Ms.
period.
Gutierrez stayed on set and she was sitting in a
If
police
the facts
car.
are not good for you, don't
With the
jump up
door
and down
open,
on them.
And there was a coworker of hers sitting in there visiting with her. You agree with that?
Yes, I do.
And she had her phone. You agree with that?
Yes,
She was allowed to make phone calls.
yes,
She was never placed in handcuffs. You agree with that?
correct.
So what's problematic about that? How was she mistreated by police?
I didn't say she was mistreated.
Yeah.
It was every appearance of not being free to leave. I based that on the fact that when Lieutenant Benavides would step away from his vehicle, he would tell a deputy to keep an eye on it. If she's free to leave, and she's just sitting in the back of the unit with an open door, she should be allowed to walk away if she wanted to.
Yep.
It gives the impression that she is in custody when you're not free from constant observation from law enforcement.
Well, but isn't it
Somebody
true
woke up.
that
Oh,
she seemed to be having a
hello.
panic attack, and it was
Did you win?
appropriate for Lieutenant Benavides
Yes.
when he walked away
You have
to
really
ask another
sticky
officer
garbage
to keep
breath?
an eye on her to make sure she's okay.
No licking till you have a breath mint.
Isn't that true?
At that time, she appeared fine.
Did she?
Okay,
Is that a yes?
you are going in the tub tonight. Because wow, do
So-
you stink. What did you
Is
get
it
into
your
when I wasn't looking, huh?
expectation that Mr. Baldwin should have been detained?
What kind of mess am I going to find?
Do you believe that they should have detained him?
I do.
And do you believe that they
Pleads
should
the
have
fifth.
put him in a police car and taken his phone away?
Not necessarily placed in a police car, but he should have been segregated from the other witnesses, and his phone should
Yes,
have been
that's what he wants.
taken to preserve evidence.
Don't you agree with me that there
Don't
has
you?
to be probable cause
Don't you?
that there may be evidence on
Don't
the phone
you?
before the phone can
Yes.
be taken?
But they wouldn't know if there was going to be evidence on the phone without interviewing.
Shush.
There was no other way to
Oh,
know whether
shushy,
there was
baby.
evidence on that phone or not. But he was on
Zet
the
Ziggy
phone
baby.
when law enforcement arrived.
Mm-hmm.
So who was he talking to?
Well, did you look at his call logs?
That's after the fact. I'm talking about when deputies arrived at the scene.
Okay, I appreciate that, but what I'm trying to figure out is what about your concerns
Here we
actually
go.
turned out
Yeah.
to be real issues with the investigation? What
Billy,
evidence was missing or
Billy.
hidden by Mr. Baldwin? What evidence do you have?
We don't have the full contents of his phone.
Has the defense filed any kind of a motion in this case to try to get the full contents of his phone?
He wouldn't know that.
And you understand, though, that a full extraction of Mr. Baldwin's
Again,
phone was done in
defense,
New
have you
York,
lost the power
but
of
you were
speech?
given limited
up!
support. You understand that?
Yes, I do.
And
Like,
you also
object just to
understand
interrupt
that,
the flow she's got going.
originally, the same thing happened with Ms.
Like, the
Gutierrez.
dude's got his glasses on,
A
scribbling
limited
notes.
support was
He's, like,
generated for
forgotten that
full
he's on the job
extraction.
here.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you agree with me that defense counsel is
You're
free
just so
to
happy.
issue subpoenas and file motions to compel and do all of those things in a case if they feel that they're missing evidence?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Oh, yes, he is. He's so happy of a puppy. Okay.
So do
You
you
are
think that it
sufficiently
would be
belly
appropriate
rubbed.
then for law enforcement to
Okay.
take Ms.
Now, you have
Gutierrez's
dirt
phone
on your
away from her
belly.
and not let her make a
You
phone
have
call
dirt
to her
on your
mother?
belly.
That can be monitored also.
You're so getting in the bath
I've seen it
tonight.
done both ways. I've seen them taken away where they're not allowed to make any phone calls, and I've also seen where they've been able to make a call in the presence of law enforcement.
Sir, generally, in your experience as a law enforcement officer, do you usually continue to investigate an individual for a crime after you have, let's say for months, after you have been unable to develop a single lead that that person was involved? Do you need me to rephrase that question?
I think I understand your question. You're saying, do you continue an investigation of someone that you have no information?
Yeah, right. You looked, you executed a search warrant, you interviewed the person numerous times, and you just simply don't have any evidence that they were involved. At some point, don't they just not become a suspect anymore?
I don't know if that's the correct phrase.
Do you mean the Kim K lookalike Cleopatra we've been harping on her fashion sense?
Right. So at some point with Mr. Kinney, they executed a search warrant, they interviewed him numerous times, and they didn't come up with anything. So what do you think they should have done to continue?
At that point, there wasn't much further they could go.
And sir, are you aware that the FBI will not do DNA testing on rounds, whether they're spent or unspent? Were you aware of that?
I heard about it in this case, but they have done DNA testing on casings, unspent casings.
Well, weren't you present? Were you present for a pretrial interview of the DNA expert?
Oh, Johnny Depp's lawyer.
And you heard her,
Camille Vasquez. Yeah.
That they won't do this kind of DNA testing, correct?
I did.
All right.
Yeah, she would not be allowing this. Not at all.
And you agree with me, sir, that police officers, when they arrived on scene, they knew immediately who the shooter was?
I think that.
Oh, don't worry, I'm terrible with names as well.
The first deputies arrived, but it was before.
Worse with faces, though. I'm abysmal with faces.
Little lag there, but not much time at all.
Okay, and Mr. Baldwin didn't leave the scene, did he?
He did not.
You testified on direct examination that there was a person who left the scene that was never identified. Do you recall making that statement?
I did, and that was based on what came out of some of the interviews. I don't quite recall. I think the lieutenant asked if we had everybody. And Lieutenant Benavides. Okay. And one of the deputies responded with one left. And I think he asked who that was, and the deputy didn't know.
But you know, don't you? Because you interviewed him and you asked him. Didn't you interview Reed Russell? And when you interviewed Reed Russell, he told you that he left so that he could go to the hospital to be with his close friends. And before he left, he gave all of his contact information to the police. You interviewed him. Do you recall that?
I did.
Do you need to see a copy of the interview?
I don't.
And you also understand that Mr. Russell, who left the scene to go to the hospital, was interviewed the very next day by Detective Cano. Aren't you aware of that?
I am, yes.
So what's the mystery? Who's the mystery man that left the set? He was identified, right? Correct?
Mr. Russell was identified, but I was never quite clear if it was the same individual.
Even though you asked him and he said, I'm the guy that left the set to go to the hospital?
Yes, but did he know he was the only one who left?
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. I'll pass the witness.
Redirect.
Mr. Elliott, you're aware from all your experience in law enforcement that it is the government's burden to prove in any criminal case, correct? And that burden never shifts to the defendant.
That's correct, yes.
So when you were asked earlier about why the defense didn't file motions, do subpoenas, isn't that law enforcement and the government's job to prove their case?
See, he doesn't even get 2 questions in and she's objecting. A lot of that is strategy. She wants to throw him off his game. She wants to make him forget his next question. She wants to interrupt him in front of the jury so the jury forgets the line of questioning and the line of inquiry. He should have been doing that to her every damn question, whether he had a real objection or not. Doesn't matter. You interrupt her. You do not let her go on that ranting, raving, ridiculous spiel uninterrupted for almost 10 straight minutes.
Mr. Elliott, do you recall that question?
I do.
Okay, and is it always the government's burden to prove their case, to prove in a criminal case?
It is.
Okay. Now, if law enforcement doesn't timely and appropriately obtain evidence, does that sometimes impact an entire investigation?
It can.
For example, in your experience as a homicide detective and working in civilian and military law enforcement, if you delay a search warrant for a month,
Is it
can
Super
that
Tuesday
materially
tonight?
impact a case?
It can.
And in your experience, have you seen times when there's been that kind of delay
It is.
where evidence goes missing?
I have.
You talked earlier about
Going to be like the least suspenseful
the
Super
FBI
Tuesday
and other
ever.
cases you had been aware of where they had obtained DNA. You did not expand on that.
Like, if it was
Have
possible,
you
I'd say just cancel the
been
rest of
aware
the
of other
primaries. We
cases
know
in
who the
which
candidates
FBI
are.
has searched for DNA?
But they're
in
not
some
allowed to
cases?
do that.
The Las Vegas shooting.
So based on that answer, is it your understanding they do have the capacity, the ability to do that?
Yes, they
have the
do.
ability, yes.
Earlier, you were asked a series of questions about, I'm going to categorize them as no harm, no foul. In other words, we know in hindsight now that certain things didn't happen. But in any case, homicide investigation, would you always want to start out assuming that anything can go wrong and to properly preserve that evidence?
Yes, of course.
For example, with regard to the firearm, when you testified about Lieutenant Benavides touching that firearm, would there be scenarios not like it played out here, but where somebody else turned out to be the shooter, for example, and that firearm, it was important to know the fingerprints.
Well, of course, this investigation started with a 911 call. They are not always accurate.
And so I guess my question to you is, in your experience and your training and 13 years as homicide, were you taught and trained to preserve evidence and to take those appropriate steps in every single case?
Yes.
We were asked earlier a series of questions about Ms. Gutierrez-Reed and whether she was there voluntarily or the appearance of being detained. Did the sheriffs drive Ms. Gutierrez-Reed to the sheriff's office?
Yes, they did.
Did they drive Mr. Baldwin to the sheriff's office?
No, he drove himself and followed a deputy.
From the time that Ms. Gutierrez-Reed was in the vehicle on the set to the time of the interview, did you ever notice any period of time when she was not in law enforcement presence?
I did not.
With regard to the questions about items and boxes on the prop card that you were asked, the 2 boxes, is it clear to you from reading the reports, everything that you reviewed in this case, what items Sarah and the other 2 individuals may have removed from the prop card and taken to the prop truck?
No, it is not clear to me.
And based on your entire review of the whole case, has there ever been any follow-up or any information you've received that would have clarified that, what they took from the prop card?
No, a vague, couple long guns. I think 2 revolvers. I do know who they came from, and other items that I don't know of.
One last question. If law enforcement delays, if they do not conduct a full investigation, it's possible for the defense to lose out on evidence that may have been exculpatory.
Yes, there is.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Next witness.
Your Honor, we call Frank Kuski.
Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you'll give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, have a seat talking to the microphone. Thank you.
Who brings their stuff in an envelope?
Okay, sir, good afternoon. Can you please tell the jury your name again?
Frank Louis Blair Kuski III.
Where do you currently
Be
reside?
the mayor of
Sonoma Valley,
something?
California.
And what do you do for a living, sir?
I'm managing director of Blair Financial Group, Money Managers.
I want you,
Why on earth is he here?
outside of your management and Blair Financial, to tell the jury about your experience with
Also, is he
period firearms.
wearing a sling or a gun?
Prior to, let me check the note, make sure dates are correct.
I mean, his tie
I
game is on
Took
point.
part in my first
That is a power
movies
tie.
in this, which were done with,
And I'm not talking about the movies. Let me
let's-
just,
oh, I'm sorry, okay.
yeah, let
Okay.
me just try to center my question.
Address the objection.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay, the judge is going to smack them both again because how dare you, sir? Somebody says objection, you stop talking. Somebody says objection, the next person who gets to talk ain't you, it's the judge. Shut your mouth. Now, granted, we got probably maybe 2 hours left. 2 hours is probably pushing it because I have a feeling the judge has got to be so bloody fed up that we're going to have another early day, especially with that kind of shenanigans. Oh, no, you don't. You're already restricted from being able to speak in open court. So I do not think we are getting either Sel Reed or Hannah today. If they want to be finished closing arguments, she's got to be their last witness then. She was either going to be first or last. So it looks like she's going last.
Okay.
Which is
Christy,
a good
if I
strategy
can just,
because then you
direct that a little more.
rest and you make your
I want to
closing.
go just give the jury an overview of your experience with
That's assuming
firearms.
she can make a
And not
good
necessarily
impact without
getting
getting too
into if
destroyed
your
on cross.
experience
And
with
she's
firearms and period firearms and how you
intensely vulnerable
obtain
on
that
cross.
familiarity.
Do you wish for the long explanation or the short?
No, the short.
All
Short's
right.
always better.
My father was a combat MP in the Second World War. I was shooting almost from birth. I was sent to rifle camp in Butte, Montana.
Oh,
at
is
age
this?
6.
Was he on
Hard to
set?
imagine. I grew up around a hunting family. My grandfather was a big time hunter. I grew up hunting deer and pheasants with my uncle in the forests of Ohio. I had Ohio and Indiana and Pennsylvania hunting licenses ever since they were required. I was a member, I was a Boy Scout riflery merit badge winner. I worked, was a member of the Kenyon College of Rifle team. Following graduation
Guy's a
from Kenyon
marksman.
College, I took up firearms in a very serious way, beginning collecting and shooting. I was trained by Louis Tenenbaum, essentially right out of college, who's a member of the U.S. Army Marksmanship Unit, who thought I was worth taking his time with that. I appeared in a number of little television shorts and things like that through that time period. And when
I
I
knew
really
I
got
recognized
going
this
on
guy.
primitive firearms, and I won't even
I was
talk
gonna
about
say he's an
expensive guns
actor. I know him from something.
in combat guns. I first appeared in the
I
George
swear I
Washington
recognize him from
television
something.
miniseries in 1984, and I was
Probably from multiple
assigned my
things. I think I
role as
recognize his voice too.
a surveyor in the wilderness, and of course, I had my first.
I mean, are you
real
being
flintlock
serious or are you
in my
making a
hands at that
joke?
time. I, during the earlier times, had shot a lot of primitive weapons, primarily flintlocks. Black powder stuff. Was very interested in that. After that, I got going and I joined a group called the First American Regiment in 1985, which was the premier late 18th century, early 19th century reenactors from military reenactment. And during this time,
It's
I
a
believe we
joke.
have a nice
It could have
picture of
been.
me firing
But I
cannons.
swear
I
I've seen him
became a
in
sergeant of
something.
artillery doing reenactment big time. And in that capacity, I appeared in lots of movies. I fired artillery.
Yeah.
18th century artillery. I fired the 1812 Overture with Cincinnati Symphony in various performances in big
Oh,
stadium
now I
symphonies.
want to remember his name and I can't.
Also, sorry for the cough. I also answered questions for NBC Nightline fairly routinely on weapons identification because, of course, I'm fairly good expert in Russian weapons and one of the largest collectors in the United States.
Yeah, I want his name because I want to look up his
took part
IMDb
with
page.
First American
Find out what I
Regiment
recognize
in
him from. It's driving me crazy.
many different film productions, television productions, that sort of thing, which were done by PBS and I believe the History Network. These were shown at the time on television and also became educational movies, programs. They sold the rights to us, charging with bayonets to all kinds of ad agencies.
Okay, let me stop you for a second. There's a lot of information.
And that's the short answer.
That's okay. But I want to ask you, in the course of that, and you've had a whole lifetime. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it is.
Of gun.
Oh.
Have you been a collector also of period type weapons?
Yes, very much so.
Okay. Are you familiar with the revolver?
Sir,
in
are
this
you a
case,
certified badass?
The 45 long Colt.
Absolutely.
Did you bring with you today that revolver? Not that revolver, but a revolver just like that revolver?
Yes, we would call that a sister. It is made by Pieta, the same exact company. It was
So is he
nearly
legit wearing a
2
gun
feet away
holster?
nowadays. It is absolutely identical.
I was half-ass
Really
joking. I didn't think you'd be allowed to conceal carry in a courtroom.
Did you also bring a replica gun with you?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell the jury just first of all what
Sure.
that is?
This is a Denex replica. Denex is a company in Spain that makes replicas of anything from shotguns to antique weapons to swords, things like that. They're used by reenactors. They're used in movies. There was a Denex revolver on the set of Rust that was used as one of the dummy guns. There were, in fact, 10 non-firing replica guns on the set.
Hey,
that looked
Mandy.
like this. So it
I
can't
think this
shoot,
guy's
but it
wearing
looks
a real
like it
gun in court
functions
because
across
New
the cylinder
Mexico.
case, and from
And it's freaking me out a
high
little
feet
bit.
away, you
Also, I'm
can
still
tell
trying to figure out
whether
what I
it's
know
real
this
or
guy
not.
Okay, so
from. I need his name.
let me, if I can, yes, I was gonna,
I
ask at this
oh,
time.
I want to go back and
somebody
get his
who is
name
an
so much
expert
because I need to
in
look up where I
categories
know
that
this guy
previously
from.
did.
Well, why don't you state them on the record again?
I was making sure I had the exact wording. Is that okay if you wrote those down? Because I don't want to change it. Right, well, I'll just say it again. It's firearm identification, firearm functioning, reloading of ammunition, and identification of ammunition with dummy rounds and live rounds.
Any objection?
No objection within the confines of what we discussed at the bench.
All right, thank you.
Yes, I understand. So,
Okay, so this is part
sir,
of
if
why
you
they were
will-
late,
I'm sorry.
probably.
For these specific areas, subject to the ruling up at the bench. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. Sir, if you will, if you could,
Who rang the
however
bell?
the deputy handles this, but if you could retrieve the firearms from behind you.
Oh, is he going to demonstrate the cross draw thing that Baldwin was doing? Is that why he's wearing a holster?
It's a real.
Mr. Kuski, are you able to take the cylinder out so you can show everyone also that it's unloaded?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
And here is a 10X revolver.
All right, first of all, everybody's nervous because you have not demonstrated to us
That
that
these are
they're
clear.
unloaded. So before you start showing us the weapons, make sure they're unloaded, including that one that you just touched.
Well, one of them is not a real gun. That one is a replica. It does not, don't aim it at the judge. Good catch by the bailiff. But he's saying it doesn't, the cylinder doesn't even swing out. It's not real. It doesn't fire. There's nothing in it. But yeah, this guy needs to be more careful in a courtroom in a trial about an accidental shooting. Now he's being slower with this one because it's the real deal. That one, if loaded, will fire. Whereas the other one will not fire because it's not functional. It's just a replica. Yeah, he should have known a lot better than to be casually pointing the barrel at the judge like that. No, this is not Thel Reed. Not yet. I imagine he's got to be on the witness list for tomorrow, maybe Thursday. They did say they plan to make closing arguments by Thursday, but they have spent more than half of today either in chambers or at the bench, so very little has been got through. We also have a member of the jury that apparently has like a hard out on the 8th, which is not going to happen. The judge basically said we may be through the trial by then, but then you have deliberation, and that's going to take whatever it takes. And there's no predicting whether a jury will be back in an hour or a week. You cannot call that. Any lawyer ever with any trial experience will tell you, you cannot predict a jury. It's just not possible. And yes, I'm a fan of the TV show Bull and trial science and all that, and it has its place to a degree, but it ain't magic, and it ain't always right. Yeah, she needs to either like steam her jacket or wear like a less wrinkle prone jacket on camera days.
Okay, Mr. Kuzi, I want to make sure that, one, first of all, the Denix is the replica that's non-firing. That is obviously clear, it cannot fire, correct?
Yes, I wish
Yes,
to
and it cannot be
demonstrate.
loaded.
Okay, but, and just, let me lead the question. The other Pieta, you cleared with the deputy, but I want you to be able to take that cylinder out so we can show everyone is clear. Is that?
Absolutely. Gun is pointed in the safe direction.
It is now.
Now, we can get this pin out.
I still need all the chocolate.
It's retained,
Big gooey
cylinder is
chocolate.
retained by a pin.
You know,
Once
roughly
that
about
pin
this
is
high.
removed, the gun may be put in a partially cocked position. The cylinder may be pushed out. And again, the barrel's safe. You can look right straight through it. Sir, would you take that and show them all? It's empty. Is that acceptable?
It's up to the court.
Yes.
Okay,
No, the
no,
deputy is not involved in this.
okay.
case.
okay. And so,
It is empty. I demonstrated it's empty.
okay, okay.
May I return it to the
Yes.
firearm?
Okay, sir, now the first thing I want to ask you, comparing the Denix, the replica, to the Pieta, do they share some of the same characteristics?
Yes, they do.
And can you tell the jury, is the Denix made to look like the Pieta?
Absolutely.
And side by side.
Yep, that's the point of
you
it.
can- and Your Honor, may he step down to show the jury?
Yes.
Okay.
And the prosecution had their version of show and tell.
Pieta and the Denix side by side, just so they can see.
This is a Denix. It is a replica, totally unfiring with a blocked barrel. It functions completely like a regular revolver. The cylinder turns, it will cock, it will snap and fire. It's unable to fire any ammunition. It's used as a replica. It's made of metal, and it functions just like a single action Army Colt, but it can't fire. I'll bring the next one.
This is what most productions are now using instead of real guns.
Gun in a safe position. This is a Pieta revolver. This is the sister gun to the Baldwin gun. It's a 45 caliber single action 1873 revolver, like was issued to Custer's troops. It is a 345 long Colt. We call it this Colt, and it was designed.
This guy's got to be like the coolest grandpa ever.
And a horse. And it was the most popular firearm in Western movies.
Thank you, Mr.
Yep.
Kuczynski. If you could-
Army Colt revolver. It's the one like everybody
Yes, yes,
wants.
show what- but not with testimony, but just showing them.
Reverse them.
Mr. Kuczynski, in your review as an expert in this case, are you aware whether there was a Denix revolver like that on set on Rust?
Yes, there is. It was covered in the invoices as rented by Rust Management.
Now, not demonstrating at this point, but can you tell the jury, based on what you just showed them on the Pieta, how you safely decock that firearm when you get it cocked?
You wish me to pick up the gun and show how it is decocked? I would prefer first showing on a Denix to them and
Yes.
then on a live
Just
one.
show, don't,
Here we go. If I'm defense, I'm saying, hey, your expert stood up and did a whole lot of crap. we get to make the same theatrical showing. She's doing her job. She wants to throw him off his game. She wants to draw this out as much as possible, make him lose his train of thought, make the jury forget what they're talking about. Yeah, that officer A1. Give that man a raise, because I especially like when the guy was pointing. Granted, it is a non-fireable fake gun. That doesn't matter. Always muzzle discipline, because he had not shown that it was clear or fake yet. And when he was aiming at the judge, the deputy just put his hand right over it and made him aim it at the ground. Like, no, you don't.
Demonstrate that the cocking and proper decocking of that weapon.
Yes. This is one of the primary things that an individual must be trained in to safely cock and decock a Colt revolver or a replica. Now, first, the finger has to stay off of the trigger and outside of the trigger guard.
Now,
No
granted,
matter
at a
what.
distance, you can
Just
tell
like
that
a
that
real
is
thing.
fake because there's a screw through the
Firearm is
barrel.
cocked with your thumb, you see. Finger's still outside of the trigger. No one touches any trigger. This is now a gun capable of being fired. Now, the first thing I do here is put my thumb on top of it. If I'm not real strong, I put two thumbs on. Notice my finger is still completely off the trigger. I then slowly, gently pull the trigger and lower the hammer onto the cartridge. I then back it up to its safe position. Now I will demonstrate the same thing exactly with a real P8 revolver. Okay, we have P8 safely aimed. My finger is off the trigger. You can see this is where it has to stay. If your finger's in there, you can't decock safely. Now, again, we cock 1, 2, 3, 4. COLT, the clips. This is a cocked, ready to fire revolver if it were loaded. My finger must stay out of the trigger guard and on the side. Now, I put my finger in, but I don't put it in until I put my thumb here. Even putting it in before, like that, would cause it to fire perhaps. Now, I'm holding the hammer back. I can feel the spring. Everything's safe. Now my finger goes on the trigger, pulls the trigger, slowly lowers to a safe position without snapping, and then pulls back to the safety notch, which removes the firing pin from the cartridge. Notice my finger is out of there again, now that the gun is cocked. And that's the only decocking. A guy doing this experience can do it with his thumb, because this is all knurled here, so it can't slip. Fingers out of there. I decock safely.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for demonstrating that.
And
And I
it
wanted
seems
to
like
ask
that's
you
what
with regard to
Baldwin
that
didn't do.
operation.
He had his finger in the trigger while he was cocking it, and that trigger swings forward when it's cocked. So
rules of firearm safety,
he didn't
including
pull the
James
trigger,
Cushing
but
District, do they apply
the pressure
equally on
made it
movie
pull.
sets?
Absolutely.
Okay, now, in your work as an expert in this case, reviewing all the information, did you agree with Mr. Haig's conclusion regarding violation of some of those safety rules?
Absolutely.
Now, I want to ask you, I want to switch topics. I want to ask you about reloading. There's been some testimony about an inertia puller.
Yes.
And if you could tell the jury what an inertia puller is.
An inertia puller is basically a type of hammer that pulls bullets out of loaded cartridges when you have a misfire or you wish to disassemble old ammo. Basically, it has a plastic head about this big. It has a handle on it like a hammer. They cost about $12. You put the cartridge, which could be any kind of cartridge, old dead cartridges, whatever you got, and you put it in, clamp it down with a little device, close the thing up. There'll be an empty space underneath, and there'll be a ring here holding the cartridge in metal, and you bang it on a table, and the bullet is pulled out. That the bullet, remember, is the lead part, not the case, and the bullet will fall out. If there's powder, that will fall out as well. You then get a bullet, ka-ching. You have powder, which you can pour out, and you have a case, which may or may not be live primed, or maybe a good primer, maybe a rechargeable case, maybe anything that happens to be there.
Okay, so Mr. Kuski, if you wanted to reload a round, let's say you want to convert a dummy round to a live
I
round,
think I know why
what are the
I couldn't
steps in
find
the
this guy on
reloading process?
IMDb.
Well,
Discord
this
TV
is
can't spell his name.
really extremely technically
Thank you,
difficult.
Damien, for looking it up. I
And
think
the way
I might
begins
find it now.
is you have to have, suppose it is a dummy. This is a beat up old
That or his,
piece of
the
old
guy who
glass
has the
that
billion
happens to have
names
nothing to do
name
with it. It has a
is
dead
more
powder
common than
in
I
it.
think.
So what you start is you pop out the bullet. You see there's no powder. Now you turn over the case, put the bullet aside. The
Why
case
can I not find this
is
guy?
filthy. The case is all grody and nasty from sitting around. It has to go in a machine called a tumbler. Every reloader with assault has a tumbler. It's about this big. Sometimes it's a ball, sometimes it's a drum. It's filled with generally powdered walnut, and it's got a motor, and it spins and spins and spins as a polishing machine. And at the end of that time, you come out with brass that looks somewhat better than it started because it's knocked off some of the crud. You then wipe that down smooth. You then have to have a tool which is called a reloading press. I have a photograph, if you wish to see, of a reloading press. Would that be acceptable?
We can actually.
Well, let's go finish.
Oh
You
yeah,
then
the
have a
gun
reloading
definitely
press.
had a
The
hair
reloading
trigger for
press is
sure.
one of its functions is
Because I
to
saw
get that old dead
multiple people
primer.
who are gun
Remember, the
experts
primer's in the little hole in the bottom of
saying
the
that like a
brass
2-pound
shell.
trigger pull,
This
that
press
is
has a big
light
lever. It has
AF.
a special pin designed for that cartridge to remove the primer, because if it went the other direction, you'd bang the cartridge up. But there's one more tool you must have, and that's called a shell carrier or a little shell holder. And that's sized exactly for the diameter of the rim of the cartridge you're going to take apart. So 45 couldn't take a 380 or something like that. Has to be a 45. Slide in that so it holds it's completely solid. Put this in your press, line it up over the top and pull. And when you pull, that pin will drive out the primer. It changed. Now you've got a case with no primer in it. It's shined up as best as your material can do. Now we get to the good part. You have to put a new primer in. First, you have to have a new primer, and they're very, very hard to get in much of the markets because they've been just grabbed up. So you take this tiny little primer, you put it in a tool called a priming tool. This may be part of your press, or it may be an independent machine. And this will hold the primer safely. Again, it has to be for your cartridge. You have to put that little shell holder in. You put the shell, which is empty, the empty case, slide it into the holder, pull the lever, and the primer, which
I think
is
if you show this guy the pictures of
is
Seth
pressed
Kenny's bench and
carefully
say, "Sir,
up
do you
into
see
the
the tools
cathode
necessary there to reload rounds?"
If you didn't have the shell holder and all the right gear, you couldn't
I think
do
they
it.
might.
The primer would blow up the minute it was hit, but it's safe this way. Now you've got a case, and that case is starting to get to be a live case. And it would be called a live case. It has a live primer and a shiny case. You then put that in your press and go to the next stage. I have the press. You stick it in that ever-present shell holder again. It holds it perfectly, immaculately straight. You then have on your press something called a sizing die. The sizing die costs about $55, fits in presses. You adjust that properly, which takes some skill, and you pull. The sizing die goes right over the top of the case and makes it the right size, because an old dummy isn't the right size. It'd jam up in your gun, wouldn't take a bullet, piece of junk. Once it's sized, there's a little ball inside, pulls it up, and that very neatly expands the top of the case. And without that expansion, you can't put a new bullet in. So now we've got a nice expanded case with a nice live primer in it. Looks pretty darn good. It's all sized to the right size. The mouth is expanded. Now you got to have a powder measure, and you have to have the right powder. You can't just use any old gunpowder. There are literally dozens and dozens. It has to be the acceptable powder for a 45 load and measured. You get too much, you blow up. Literally, blow up the gun, blow up in your face, and everybody knows about that. Put too little in, you get something called a squib, where it pushes the bullet into the barrel where it sticks. That's what killed Brandon Lee, with a bullet. And now you've got the right amount of powder. Now to measure that powder, you need either a powder scoop of the right size, and they make dozens. So you'd say, okay, I want one for that powder for that round. And you scoop it out. That's pretty fast. That's the old way. The new way is something like what I have, and these are computer-driven, perfect measures that will get within 1 grain of powder. They're computer-driven trickle chargers. They cost about $300. They're real fancy. Put in the powder, put in the exact grains of weight that you want that powder to be, press the button, and a little
I
tiny
get the
kite
impression the
goes up.
first bullets
It's
this guy
exactly
ever
right
made
on
were
the
like
cartridge.
melted
You're
lead
fine.
balls for a
Now you
musket.
got powder, you got primer, you got a good case. You take your bullet and you put it on the top. But you need one more tool for your press, and that is a die that fits that bullet. And so you put in the die, everything's sitting there. You pull the big lever and puts pressure straight exactly down. Push the bullet in exactly as deep as you want it to go. And after it's in there, the die that you've purchased, which is another expensive toy, presses on the outside of the case and puts what's called a crimp on it. And that case now has the bullet seated on top of the powder, the exact correct depth, which you know through measurements and books, and it squeezed real tight. Otherwise, the bullet would just fall out. Or the first time you fired the gun, the bullet would just flop out on the other cartridge. It must be crimped tight.
So, Mr. Kuski, that is an enormous
Civil
amount of
War.
steps, correct?
Yes.
And I appreciate the complete explanation, because would you agree that it's not sufficient to just have an
Not the
abortion
Marvel one.
to accomplish all those steps? Okay.
It's useless.
Okay. And with all of that required for reloading, you've described the components of a live bullet. Are you also in agreement with the FBI that you cannot tell a live round from a dummy?
Yes.
With a picture?
In a picture, absolutely not.
Did you, I know in the course of your expert work, you were able to watch portions of the trial and pay attention. Did you see in any of the videos or any of the pictures, any of this type of reloading equipment you've been talking about?
Well, I believe in Seth has a tumbler, I think I saw in the back, which is what you polish up brass with for reloading. I saw
Action Foundation.
I know, right?
I'm having an issue with my shoe. Pardon me.
Yeah, but this is where the defense's lack of a good cross on Seth Kenny is going to be an issue. She could win this because the defense did such a piss poor job going after Seth Kenny or proving that he's a liar or having any clue what they were talking about. They just expected him to just say, oh yeah, I guess I do have reloading equipment, even though I just said I never reload bullets. And yeah, that's a box of casings, so why do I have those? He didn't get asked that question. The defense did not set this up properly. She could win this argument. But yeah, I was right. The defense wants to show him the pictures of Seth Kenny's place and say, don't you see the ability to turn dummy rounds into live rounds or reload spent casings on this photo of the bench? Very cluttered with the green and yellow handles photo. Do they get there, or did she win?
Sir, let me ask you on a different topic.
She
With
won.
regard to the dangers of intermixing live and dummy
That's
ammunition.
incredibly bad for him.
Can you tell the jury if those are stored in the same place, or is that potentially dangerous?
There we go again. Okay, this objection I think she's just doing to be a brat, but yeah, I still cannot find this guy on IMDb, by the way. I know his face, but I've tried various combinations of his name. I cannot find this guy. I'm thinking he has like a stage name or something. Doesn't he look like every detective in Law and Order ever?
Mr. Kuski, do you regularly, as a gun collector, gun owner, everything, do you regularly have interaction with different types of ammunition?
Yes, I do.
And does that include live ammunition and dummy ammunition?
Yes, it does.
And do you, with regard to the dummy ammunition, do you teach individuals proper gun safety?
Absolutely. I'm an NRA certified pistol instructor.
And as part of that, do you sometimes use dummy rounds in your teaching with them?
Yes, I do.
In that capacity, have you become familiar with various types of dummy ammunition?
Yes, I do.
And are you familiar with various types of live ammunition?
Yes, I am.
Do you store live ammunition, or do you have a place to store live ammunition yourself?
Yes, I do.
And do you have a place to store dummy ammunition yourself?
Yes, I do.
Are you familiar with whether there are any dangers of storing those together?
Absolutely.
And why would that be?
There are two sides of the danger. One easy to see, and that is if a live round somehow found its way in with look-alike dummy ammunition, you would have a very severe chance of having somebody getting killed. Now, the flip side is perhaps equally dangerous, though less visible. If I'm hunting Russian wild boar, which I hunt with a handgun in California, and I go to shoot at a Russian wild boar that weighs 325 pounds and it's coming right at me, and the gun goes click because I substituted a dummy, I will be the dead one. So yes, both sides are bad.
Absolutely. And with regard to your storage of ammunition, is it important to have an inventory system?
Yes, I have an inventory system for all my ammunition, all my powder, all of my reloading, which goes into.
Yeah, they should have attacked Seth Kenny's lack of inventory a lot
in the
more.
course of your reloading, did you become aware that in 2021
How do you
timeframe, was it
function
difficult
as
to
a
purchase
business?
primers?
Yes, we called
Like,
the
oh,
great
I own
ammo
hundreds of
shortage,
guns. Just don't ask me
and
what they
there
are or
was,
where
for a
they are, because I have
variety
no
of reasons,
idea.
a huge run on ammunition. You couldn't get primers to reload. You know, they just didn't happen. You couldn't get them. Go to the store, couldn't get them. You couldn't get even 9mm ammo. You couldn't get almost anything. The store shelves were emptied out. People were hoarding powder. Even my long-range rifle stuff, I couldn't get powder. So yes, that's called the great ammo shortage, and to a certain extent, it still goes on.
Now, during your course as an expert, in this case, you heard Mr. Haig's testimony. Do you agree with his conclusion that the live rounds found on set were reloads?
Yeah, well, hand loads.
Hand
A
loads.
reload means that it's an old case reloaded. He was very.
Objection.
Okay, so the state not letting up with their constant objections, which again, good on them. She's doing her job, and it's good trial strategy. As we can see, Mr. Bull's not so great at setting up for big questions. He's jumping all over the place. He keeps getting shot down by the judge. I'm guessing she's making a foundation argument.
Mr. Kuski, is it your opinion?
I'd expect
that
after this witness, or
from your
possibly
viewing
before
that the live rounds on set were reloads or
cross,
hand
that
loads?
we take afternoon break,
And would you explain what the
which would usually
what
have
you
been by
saw,
now.
the quality?
But it was a
the-
very, very
was it a
late
lower
start.
quality, in your opinion,
Lower quality than what?
in terms of like a store-bought round from a major manufacturer or something like that, or do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I believe they were less consistent than that of a major manufacturer. Meaning, and I can expound on that if you wish.
Yes.
Okay. When you get,
Here we go again.
Let's approach.
Your Honor, the witness is sworn in as an expert. Let him testify. I don't care if you're going to get smacked, Mr. Bowles. You need to be freaking making an argument here, because she is running your questioning right now, and she's doing a better job than you. Yes, she absolutely does. I almost said that on her face last time they approached. Because, yeah, the look on the judge's face, I am telling you, there is a bottle of something in her office, and she is counting the minutes until she can pour a freaking drink and not have to listen to these fools anymore. Okay, she is like halfway to a beach somewhere that she's going to spend a week on after this trial because it's too much. Too much children and pigeon business. Uncle doesn't mind other people using his sprays. He has merch of the pigeon business, which I so need some of. I need like a pigeon business mug is what I need. I am still attempting to find this guy, but even going on just wider Google search for actor, I'm not getting anything by this name.
Okay, Mr. Kutsky, so your opinion is that these are hand loads?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you understand also as an expert in reviewing the information in this case, there are a variety of different types of dummy rounds on set? There were a variety?
Yes.
Okay. And did that include some that rattled, some that did not rattle, and some with a hole in the side?
Yes.
Okay. Did you also review evidence in this case of Mr. Baldwin not only being dangerous at the time of the actual tragic shooting, but dangerous at other times on set?
Oh my god, now she's just being a bitch. This witness is gonna be the rest of the day. I'm calling it right now. Till the judge has enough and like has them physically ejected from the courtroom. Which could happen.
Okay, sir, my full question was going to be, did you see evidence that Mr. Baldwin was not safe with firearms after there was a yell of cut in a particular scene and he shot a blank after that scene?
Yes.
Yes, he
that was
did.
unsafe.
Yes, it was.
One further question. Are you familiar with the period weapon called a Henry rifle?
Yes, I am.
Are you familiar whether if that is loaded or unloaded at the bottom of that rifle, whether somebody could see whether there was rounds at the bottom of it if they're just looking?
Yes, a Henry. Yeah, go into
Yes.
detail. The Henry rifle is the predecessor to the Winchester. Mr. Henry actually invented the Winchester. It is a rifle with a very long barrel, doesn't have a handguard under, which was a problem. It's loaded from the top in a kind of a weird way, and the ammunition, the cartridges are dropped into a long tube where a spring pushes them down. One of the biggest disadvantages, and this was in the Civil War, is it has a long open side on it, beneath the barrel, where you can actually look in and see all the loaded cartridges. Now they thought that was a really good deal until they got in the mud of the trenches and the cartridges were all jammed. Right now, if you look at a Henry, anybody who knows anything about Henrys looks at that Henry and says the whole side's open and you can see ammunition in there, dummies, whatever. And if you don't have that, they're going to be laughing because it looks like an empty rifle.
Finally, sir, the last question I want to ask you, with regard to, there was some criticism in the trial, one point of Miss Gutierrez Reed holding a shotgun with it pointed in front of her. And is there, do you have an opinion on that with regard to, for example, military drill?
Yes, I do.
The witness is getting fed up with her now. So, you know, the jury's like, especially after yesterday, they've beyond had enough.
Sir, I'm going to, yet another objection, withdraw that question. And that's all the questions I have.
Cross-exam.
Mr. Kuski, Do you agree with me that basic gun safety requires that the handler of the gun not point the gun at anyone?
If it's a real gun, yes.
Do you agree with me that while you were sitting here in the courtroom, you pulled out a gun and you pointed it at the judge?
I do not.
You disagree?
I
You did.
pointed the gun into this space up here, never directly at the judge.
You
Do
pointed
you
it
agree
at
that
the
basic
judge.
gun safety requires that you keep the muzzle of the gun pointed down for safety?
Not at all. A gun may be pointed, as any hunter education class like I taught, may be pointed up, may be pointed back, may be pointed cross arms, as in the military, may be pointed at the ground, may be put in something like a military stance, such as order arms with the butt on the ground and the piece right under your arm. So no, and to further, in a cross draw or any of the
No, I'm not talking about a cross draw, thank you. Do you agree that when you pulled that firearm out and pointed it in the direction of the judge, the deputy standing next to you
Put his
had
hand
to
on it.
intervene and grab the gun and point it down?
Oh, he remembered that he gets to do that too. Welcome to the show.
Mr. Kuski, have you ever been qualified as an expert in firearm safety in a court of law?
no.
Have you ever worked on criminal cases before?
Yes, I have.
Have all of the cases that the criminal cases that you've worked on, has Mr. Bowles been the attorney in all of them?
Not at all.
Not at all?
No.
Give me a moment, please. Let me clarify my question. Have you worked on criminal cases related to the securities industry?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Other than, and you're an investment banker, correct?
Not exactly, but sufficient name for it.
Okay. And other than working on criminal cases having to do with securities, do you agree with me that the only other types of criminal cases you've worked on have all involved Mr. Bowles?
I do not.
Isn't it true, sir, that
She's trying to say this guy is his pet
you
expert.
provided a pretrial interview in this case on November 29th, 2023?
Yes.
And isn't it true that during that interview, my investigator, Mr. Rice, asked you, is Mr. Bowles the only attorney that you've worked with? And your response was, outside of the securities industry in the past, yes.
Yes, and I have worked since then, and I have worked prior to that confidentially with cases before the United States Navy and other cases which were criminal. And I believed you were speaking only of what's going on here. If you'd like to hear the other ones, I'm very happy to tell you. I worked, for example, with the Monterey Sheriff's.
Is there a question?
No, there is not a question on the table right now. You gave a lengthy description about how a person could turn a dummy round into a live round. You recall the testimony that you gave moments ago.
Yes,
I want to talk to you about doing the opposite, okay? I want to talk to you about taking a live round and turning it into a dummy round,
okay,
okay? Do you agree with me, sir, that the first step is you would place the live round in the inertia puller and smack it so that the projectile separates and the powder comes out?
yes,
And at that point in time, you are left with an empty casing, a projectile, a pile of gunpowder. But the problem with your casing is that it still has a live primer, right?
that's right.
So in order to make the primer inert, you can take that empty shell casing with that live primer, you can put it into a firearm and you can fire it.
Correct.
And now I've made the primer inert.
There is another way if you wish to hear.
No, I appreciate you though, but
Thank you. Yes, I agree.
you agree that what I'm saying, it can be done.
Can be done.
And then after I've fired it and I've heard the pop, knowing that the primer has now been made inert, I can take that projectile and I can just put super glue on it and stick it back into that casing.
Well, you couldn't normally without expanding the case. That's what I was talking about when you do a sizer. You could expand the case with a sizer, because what's going to happen in many cases, and I can't say every one because I've never done super glue, is it's very difficult to get a bullet into a case that hasn't been expanded in size. You could try it. I can't guarantee it'll work.
Sure, I mean, you can take the empty shell casing and you can put it on top of a projectile and you can take your inertia puller or a hammer.
Sounds like
and
an
just
idiot.
tap it
An
down.
inertia puller is made.
He sounds
out of
like an
plastic,
absolute
which is not
moron.
for tapping anything down. But you could take a hammer, but what's very likely to happen is you'll bend the case beyond all use and recognition.
She was doing good.
That's why you expand.
And she said
cases
super
in
glue.
the process. You could try it. I've never beaten any bullets. Some bullets are very, very hard. Some are soft. So it is possible with a soft lead bullet that you could maybe not bend your case and maybe not shave off your bullet. Possible.
And isn't it true, sir, that the live ammunition found on the set of Rust in fact had soft lead bullets?
I didn't measure the lead, so there's something called a
Well, hang on, I appreciate your response. In fact, sir, you have never actually
Okay, defense,
viewed
objection, Your
the
Honor.
live
Let the
rounds
witness
that are in
finish his
evidence. You've
answer.
only seen pictures of them, isn't that correct? So you haven't taken them and looked at them.
He's needed to
Right.
say that about a
Take
dozen
all the
times.
pictures and look, that's it.
Okay, but you watched the testimony of our expert, Mr. Haig.
Yes, I did.
Also,
And
just
isn't
to
it
know the
true that
state,
Mr. Haig
she's not going to push
testified
around his
that the
witnesses, which right now that's all
projectiles
she's doing.
from the live rounds found on the
Still
set of
wrong,
Rust
but
were soft lead?
I didn't hear soft, but lead certainly.
They weren't copper jacketed, correct?
No, not copper jacketed.
And he also testified that because they were lead and lead is a soft metal, that's the reason that that projectile became so damaged when it went through Ms. Hutchins and into Mr. Souza.
Absolutely, that's called ballooning.
All right, thank you, sir. You testified on direct examination that you can't tell a live round from a dummy round in a photograph.
Simply in a photograph. I agree with Mr. Haig, who said the same thing.
Well, do you agree with me that you can tell a live round from a dummy round in a photograph if that dummy round has a hole drilled into the casing so it can't have any gunpowder?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, sir. And in your review of the case materials, sir, you understand that live ammunition from PDQ Props was sent to the FBI, and it was determined to be substantially different than the live rounds found on the set of arrest.
I do.
You gave an opinion earlier that you believe that the live rounds were hand loads. Do
Yes,
you
I
recall
do.
that?
Yes.
And I just want to be clear, you're giving that opinion just from looking at photographs, not from going to the evidence room, taking the evidence, handling it in the way that Mr. Haig did.
Yes.
All
And,
right.
and per Mr. Haig's testimony as well.
Okay. I'll pass the witness.
He really
I
is.
don't have any follow-up questions.
You're not going to try to fix any of that? Dear God. I now underscore this statement. Like, dude, she asked him if you could super glue a bullet back together and fire it again. You have the right to go up there and say, sir, does that sound like something she may have heard on the Magic School Bus? Or it's something that Mythbusters tested and failed at? Fair play, she does look like a moron. Okay, I suspect we may get afternoon break or we're not having one, but if it isn't now... Great, they haven't even called their next witness. They're already back at the judge's bench. She's going to want to take her gavel and whack them both in the head. Like, I swear, she just wants to, like, pick up the nameplate and just be whack-a-mole. Oh, I gotta remind myself to preview chapters for book club, because I got 2 costumes pre-planned for very specific scenes. I just can't remember exactly where they are, because I can't remember any of this book. That's why the stuff about her, like, oh, my father was only abusive because I was born a girl and it's all my fault and everything's better now that I'm literally somebody else's problem because he gave me away finally.
All right, jury.
Caught
we're
me
going
so
to,
hard.
Finish for the day.
What?
You can expect closing arguments to commence tomorrow morning, not right away.
Say what?
The defense is still putting on their case, but when the defense is finished, then we will do closing arguments, and they anticipate that it will be sometime in the morning that we will get to closing arguments.
Jesus.
So please don't talk among
Okay,
yourselves or anyone else
I
about
was
the
gonna
evidence.
say no,
Please
now
don't
I'm saying
post or do
yes.
any research or online,
Dear God.
Googling about
What?
the Rust production or this.
Yeah,
Thank you.
in the morning.
We'll see you.
And they
we'll see you at
said,
8:30.
yeah, this, all of the this. Everybody come to book club Saturdays at 8. Okay, we gotta unpack this, because Jesus Christ. They originally on Friday said closing arguments were going to be Thursday the 7th. Now they're saying they're going to be tomorrow the 6th in the morning. I think Hannah's not getting on the stand. I think we were all wrong. I think she's not going to do it. But they have other witnesses listed. They have her father listed as a witness. Maybe he's their last. Is he really? I have not seen him say anything anywhere. But I'm just going to throw this out there. Are we going to get Del Reed on the stand falling on his sword? Does he get up there and say, this is my fault? This is my fault for not training Hannah properly. This is my fault for pushing her into the industry. This is my fault for mixing the live ammo and the dummy rounds from the set of Yellowstone 1883 that I was on and giving her those boxes and telling her they were dummy rounds. This is my fault. Do we get that? Because otherwise, what is the defense's case? Because if they think they made it on direct, they are wrong. They did not. They've got work they need to do. And if they're saying we have, I'm guessing only one witness, because they said they expect to be on closings in the morning, so that only leaves them time for one witness. I didn't expect this. This is something. I mean, I did hear rumors last night that the defense was going to be extremely brief, but this is like borderline incompetent brief. Now, granted, nobody can make Hannah testify. They can't. Nobody can make her, even her own team. That is 100% her choice. And they may feel that. Thank you for reminding me to breathe. They might feel that she is too vulnerable on cross to take the risk. And I get that, because there's a lot of things that the state can cross her on that would make her look incredibly bad. The defense is asking the jury to take a lot on faith without her standing up there and saying it. They're more or less relying on the OSHA report to make their case for them, because the OSHA report is the only thing that definitively said she is not responsible. The OSHA report completely exonerated her, gave her all the outs in the world, and said it is production's fault. It is their fault. They did not follow the safety protocols that were posted on set. They did not follow the basic rules of the industry, and they did not allow the armorer to do her job. The counter argument to that is, when she wasn't being allowed to do her job and follow proper safety protocols, why didn't she walk? And I think that question is going to hit the jury hard. I think it's the one thing they're going to be debating in the jury room is, why didn't she walk away? Because the state had two different experts stand up and say, if that is the situation, if that's the situation she was put in, you walk. You don't run an unsafe set. You demand that safety be a priority, or you take the guns and go home. Plain and simple. The defense has done nothing to rebut that. And I think this is some very, 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 very poor defense strategy, because her lawyer is mainly a civil guy. He does civil law. And if I'm in a civil trial, this is the way you go, because civil liability is logical. And if you have an OSHA report that says not your fault, somebody else's fault, that's how you win a civil trial. However, this is a criminal trial, and the rules are very different, and how you win is very different. I think the defense thinks they're doing a good job. I think their client's going to pay the price for their gross incompetence in all that that implies. She was very, very, very immature. Yeah. She was incredibly immature. She was too young to be doing this job unsupervised. She was not experienced enough, and clearly she did not have the confidence to stand up to authority. And when you're at all in charge of safety of any kind, whether you're an armorer, you're a lifeguard, you have to be able to stand up to authority. She couldn't do that. Somebody died as a result. At the end of the day, that's where the jury's going to wind up. They're going to say it was her job, regardless of pressure, regardless of bullying or whatever else. It was her job. She didn't do it. And the defense has offered nothing to counter that, except feel bad for her because she was young and inexperienced, and women get treated like crap in Hollywood. Which they haven't even done a very good job of establishing that. So very, very unexpected, very, very early end to the day. We will certainly be here. The judge didn't say what time we're starting tomorrow. I'm assuming they're starting at 8:30 their time. That is 10:30 Eastern. I will be here bright and early because I want to see every second of it tomorrow. We could well have a verdict tomorrow, because I don't... If they go to deliberations in the morning, there's usually about an hour's worth of jury instructions. And then they'll have lunch, of course, but we could see a verdict by tomorrow afternoon. It's not impossible. So yeah, everybody come back bright and early to watch apparently the end of this trial, and then we'll be on verdict watch, and I will keep an eye. If it comes in at a reasonable time that I am able to jump in live, I will do so. Yes. Yeah, you can talk to the dog about when he should jump on my head. He for the right amount of food, he will do that for you. He's very bribable. So I guess we will call it an early day. But yeah, everybody, if you would like to tip, link is above. Please like, comment, subscribe, and please come to book club. Saturdays at 8 will always be book club, always hosted right here on this channel. And yeah, everybody, take a free hour, do some exercise, eat a vegetable, and above all, hug a fur baby. I will see you back here in the morning. Bye.